Hello and welcome to South Asia Chat, a podcast series brought to you by the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore. I'm Devyani Chaturvedi, Research Analyst at ISAS, and I will be your host for today's episode. The Finance Minister of India, Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman, presented the Indian Union budget for fiscal year 2024-25 on 23rd July 2024. And subsequently, significant conversations have been focused on the issues of unemployment and skill training in India. To help deconstruct this aspect of the Indian economy, joining us today is Dr. Bornali Bhandari, who is a professor at the National Council of Applied Economic Research, India, with a background in international economics and macroeconomics. She also oversees the production of the NCAR quarterly business expectation surveys. Welcome, Dr. Bhandari.
Thank you, Devyani, for inviting me to this podcast, to the ISS NUS podcast. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Thank you so much. We're delighted to have you. So, beginning our podcast for today and the set of questions that I have, the first one is, what is your impression of the current unemployment situation in India?
It's a very important question. And I'll take a step back and ask myself is what is unemployment? Unemployment is also another symptom of a skill mismatch. That is essentially a person has those skills, but he or she has not been able to find a market for them. And that's the thing. So unemployment is essentially includes those people who are seeking jobs, right? And they have not been able to find a job. Um, so in that case, unemployment rate is also a symptom of skill mismatch. Now, what we find is that unemployment rate has gone down from the pandemic years. Um, Though, if you look at the unemployment rate trends, which the periodic labor force survey publishes, urban unemployment rate for every quarter, till the March 2024, the data available indicates that for the last 1 year, unemployment rate has stagnated around a certain rate. And it is the male unemployment rate which has stagnated, whereas the female unemployment rate has actually come down. So the male unemployment rate, the overall unemployment rate in March 2024 was around 6.1%. Sorry, 6.7%. The male unemployment rate was 6.1%, and the female unemployment rate was 8.5%. Why am I throwing these numbers at you? Essentially, I want to highlight that while trend has come down, the overall gap between male and female unemployment rate remains. The second question, which I want to come back to you, is there are two qualifiers to this. One is the youth unemployment rate. The youth unemployment rate is very high. India is not uncommon that way, because youth unemployment rates tend to be higher for almost all the countries around the world. But something is, why is youth unemployment rate high? Is this a signal for other things that's going on in the market? That's one thing you have to think. And the second thing is the female unemployment rates tend to be higher, which is again, the question is what are the questions there? And a third point that I want to point out to you is the quality of employment. That it is not typically, unemployment rates tend to be low in India because you have to work to sustain yourself. So it's not a choice. But are you employed in a max situation where you are using your workers? Last year, when I published my report on food delivery platform workers, while it is nice that the platforms are providing jobs to youngsters, the youth young, but is this the kind of job that the young want? Is this just a getaway? Is this a stopgap arrangement for them with no social security, no nothing? Is this what they want? So they treat it as a stopgap arrangement. So it's not just about unemployment rates, which may be low, but behind the numbers, there are a lot of dynamics that's going on. And the quality of unemployment could be high. It could be distressed. Quality of employment itself may be very low, and that itself is a signal for other market dynamics. Let's stop here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just a couple of days back, we read in the newspaper as well that in India, there were a couple of jobs advertised by an airline company, and the number of people who applied, some of whom were way more qualified than the job required, kind of definitely gives insight into the gap in quality of employment that exists. So that takes me to naturally the next question, which is that, how effectively this year's budget has attempted to address these issues that you've highlighted, and what kind of policies could actually further improve the situation?
Yeah, I think I'll take off from the illustration that you used and say, okay, there are more people looking for a job than there are jobs. So in that case, one has to ask oneself is, why is this? Are students or are the youth accumulating degrees to signal to the potential employer that I am skilled? So I just want to say two things that creating jobs, there are two sets of dynamics that drives jobs making, because jobs is related to the macroeconomy. So one, if the macroeconomy is good, is good, is growing, you will create more jobs. Of course, the elasticity of employment may be high or low, but it is related to the dynamics of the economy. That's one thing. The second thing is that we have three things in India that's going on when in terms of, if you think of the macro scenario. The macro one is, of course, our demographics. We have a lot of young population, and if you want to reap the demographic dividend, we have to invest in them. The second thing is that technological changes have been very rapid and continuously changing the last couple of years, last decades. So now, given that, are we? So it's not that you can actually train the kids every single time a technology changes, or somebody might be in the middle age group. So you can't always train them for the technology, but do you provide avenues for reskilling and upskilling? Do you provide do they have the skills to even learn themselves, independent learning, active learning, which are skills? And do they have the skills to actually pick up things? And the third thing, of course, is the uncertainty, right? It's since the great financial crisis of 2009, it's been one thing and the other. And the pandemic, of course, was a black swan event. So when you look at this, if I want to signal to the labor market, to the potential employer that I'm well qualified for a job, what will I do as a youth? I just accumulate degrees. And so that's why you find so many people, but they don't have the appropriate skill sets. The degrees are not actually translating into skills which the firms want. So, and they don't have the socio-emotional skills because they're not getting it from school. They do not have the actual skills that are needed for the work. That is not happening because neither the education system at whatever level is not translating to that. So some of the kids go through the system, but the majority are not able to signal to the market that they actually they have the appropriate skill set. You may have the degree, but not the skills. And this is frequently what we hear. So now you take a step back and ask yourself, what has the budget done? So the budget is addressing the issue in a twofold manner. One, by doing this intervention on employee provident fund and so on and so forth, they are encouraging what I talked to you about was quality employment, essentially making sure that majority of the workers actually have access to some pension funds. So that's one thing. So it's not enough that they have a job, but they have a good quality job. The other thing, the government has done a range of interventions on skilling. They've encouraged apprenticeships and internships. Now, what happens on ground, is a story we'll get to know later. But the intention is very clear. By doing these apprenticeships and internships, you are actually bridging the gap between education and employment. So you're improving the employability. So while at school, if you do an apprenticeship or an internship, essentially you learn the tools of the trade. You learn how to do, you learn how to do, how to apply those skills for the job that is needed. It's a very funny thing. I had an intern this summer, and he said, my dad told me that the whole point of an internship is just to get up early in the morning and turn up for school, for work every single day. As in, yeah, that is the point. It's not that in 1 or 2 months you're going to change the world. But there are times, you connect with them, and it's a very interesting thing there, because as researchers, for us also, sir, exchange process. But anyway, coming back to the main point, what the budget is trying to do is address these fundamental issues of trying to improve the not just jobs, but quality of jobs. The second thing it's trying to do by the way, these is skilling interventions, both on the supply side and demand side, that is improving the quality of the skilling systems, vocational skilling institutions, and encouraging firms to actually, by nudging them or by whatever means, to improve, have more internships and apprenticeships that will improve. Ultimately, the objective is to improve the employability of these students.
Thank you so much for first talking about your intern. I think he or she would be very happy to hear their mention in this podcast. Um, but I think kind of learning from your answer to this, what we understand is the problem of structured unemployment in an economy as big as India requires interventions both on demand and supply. And one of the key interventions that we saw in this budget was how this year's budget kind of proposed that the interest on the employees' provident fund contributions that exceed 2.5 lakhs per year should be taxable. How do you think such initiatives would influence employment? Of course, you spoke about improving the quality of it, but for many who kind of saved through the EPF, if you're taxed on that, then anyway, income tax in India is highly taxable. So what kind of impact do such initiatives have?
Uh, see, you also have that if you follow the Indian macroeconomy, essentially what's happening is consumer demand has been quite muted. So, if you are saving, if your EPF is nothing but Employee Provident Fund, which is basically provides for your pension. Now, the thing is, what if I save all my money, put all my money in the EPF, or a significant share of the money in the EPF? Essentially, whatever I'm doing that, I'm actually I'm saving more, I'm spending less, I'm saving more. But if the government wants to nudge people into spending more rather than saving, especially in pension, and and the upper income strata could do that as a tax saving strategy, is that they start putting more funds in EPF. It creates a macroeconomic, it could potentially create that a macroeconomic disincentive for consumer spending. So in a way is and of course addresses issues of inequality. So it could be a problem, and therefore one could potentially argue that this is in nudges people into spending more, consumer spending goes up, and at the same time is you encourage pension. It's not like the upper income strata, the small this upper income strata just puts all the savings in EPF and gets a tax benefits. So it's a balancing act in a way, in a multiple, which addresses the issue in a multiple way. One could potentially think about it. Does it issue directly the issue of employment? Probably not. And of skilling, probably not. But there are, of course, any policymaker has to deal with multiple macro issues. So then how to keep that balance out is always a challenge.
Okay, so I think when we discussed the budget interventions, we spoke about on one side encouraging employment, increasing access to employees pension fund and all of that. The other aspect that we spoke about was skilling, which is something that I would like to know more about from you. So as we noted in several conversations and your own commentaries as well after the budget, that there has been a significant mismatch in the skills in the labor and then their access to the employment market. So there seems to be a critical mismatch in what the industry requires and what labor is available. In light of that, what kind of a skill gap exists in the Indian workforce?
So I know I probably spoke this in the budget too, but I just want to emphasize this in a podcast in this podcast too, that when you think about skills, what is skills? It is very important to think of skills in a holistic fashion. So one is, of course, your cognitive skills, your socio-emotional skills, and then we have technical and vocational skills. All three of us combined to make a person employable in any job. In my job also, in my role also, and when you enter the labor market, in your job and your job role also. Now, where do we get this cognitive skills? As I said, you need to write, you need to read, you need to listen, you need to communicate. These are all what you call a cognitive skills. And these cognitive skills are can be taught right from school onwards. So reading starts from pre-KG or KG, nursery or KG. Onwards, of course, a degree of complexity develops. So that's our cognitive skills. Social-emotional skills, the literature has come from the psychological literature, and they've mapped it on to that. And what are the kind of characteristics that you want a job? The kind of characteristics that you want are somebody who's empathetic, who's willing to work 8 hours, who is does not get lose temper, does and knows how to work in a team, cooperative, so on and so forth. So those are socio-emotional skills. And the third skill is the technical and vocational skills, which is what what the government policy talks about is this thing, which is what the interventions are about, is that, at least you know how to how to do the job on hand, which could be like, let's take an example of a welding machine welder. We need a lot of welders for the manufacturing industry. They should be able to hold a steady hand. They should be this thing. It takes time to actually train someone to hold a steady hand to do those do the welding. Of course, there are different types of welders, and that technology is also changing. So given that, you have to understand what the job roles are and what the tasks they're doing, and accordingly, what skills would be needed for the job. And those skills could actually vary across cognitive, socio-emotional, and technical and vocational. So that's a brief introduction. Now, the thing is, when you talked about skills mismatch, unemployment is one issue. Of course, there could be skill gaps, there could be skill shortages. There are various definitions of skill gaps. So which one are you talking about? That is one thing. One thing is you don't find the numbers. You don't find enough welders at the right price. That is one set of problem. The other one is that you find the welders, they have the degree, but they don't have the appropriate skill set. Their hands are not steady while they're holding the welding machine. So that is the intensive problem. So you either you don't find enough people, enough numbers at the right price, or if you don't find, you find the people, but they don't have the appropriate skill sets. So that is the skills gap your now one is talking about. There's a macro level, of course, skills gap, that not enough people in India are moving out from agriculture to industry. That's another kind of a skills gap. So when you talk about skills mismatch, it can be at a macro level, it at a micro level. So what we have to be very clear of what we are talking about. Of course, in India, both sets exist. Both a macro structural imbalance that only 46% of the labor force is producing 18% of GVA, something like that. So that's an agricultural problem. That's we have a structural macro problem. Then the micro problems is that the employers need a certain skill set for a job, and they're not finding enough people, or if they do find people, then they don't have the appropriate skills that they require. The third problem is aspirational mismatch. Aspirational mismatch is when the youth have aspirations, and they don't want to work in a certain set of jobs. Now, what do you do about that? That when you hear about everybody wants to go into the IT sector, which is what you hear frequently from employers. Everybody wants a white collar job. They don't want to work with hand. They don't want to work for 8 hours. So now they go. So you hear the same set of problems. Then if And another surprising thing that has come across in India is people don't have communication skills. They want people with communication skills. This is not my work. You can check out, recently an article came out. Um, so they don't have communication skills. So if communication skills, my question is very simple. If communication skills are important for a job, they're not being taught in school and college, then clearly we miss something in a supply side. And we know very well that these skills can be taught. Whether you're good or bad at it is one thing, but at least if you remember, if you can, this can be taught. So the skills mismatch is that if what if there's an aspirational mismatch, then what do? The answer then is counseling and mentoring. That means you need to start sitting with students, telling them what they want. And the last but not the least problem, I mean, there are many problems, but another skill set mismatch is everybody wants the government job, the public job in the public sector. It's because it assures you of a steady income, it assures you for pension, health insurance, steady job, and on a lighter note, ability to earn income. Even if incomes are low, you can earn incomes from other sources. But that aside, it has a distortionary impact on the rest of the labor market because the youth then are sitting till they turn 29 or 30, whatever the cutoff age is, for the government exams, hoping they crack the lottery. So the skill mismatch plays out in India at multiple levels, and that's what we need to address. And we have to start, catch them young and watch them grow. That means you have to start at the school level. So I stop here.
I think this is quite insightful because you just right here have given me about five different kinds of mismatches that exist and how they are impacting the economy and actually changing people's lives on a regular basis every day. Um, okay, so I think I will just.
Devani, I forgot one point, quick point. I just want to bring
Okay.
in here. Skills is an indirect demand, okay? Because any labor market is always an indirect demand, factors of production, right? Because if this is, I'll give you a simple example, demand for typewriters. If typewriter is a product, there were people involved in producing typewriters. But now because of changes in technology, as typewriter goes out of business, it's beyond. So the people who were involved, the workforce who were involved in working on typewriters, they would now be what we call as structural unemployed, right? They need to be retrained into producing other products or so on and so forth. So when you think about jobs and skills, one has to think about ultimately is that market, that is there a, again, we come back to the macroeconomy. If your macroeconomy is robust and sound, and all the indicators, all the incentives in the economy are well aligned, then only will you create jobs, right? And therefore the associated skills. If that market is down, obviously it's automatic that you will not create jobs. I mean, demand for computers went up, so demand for workers who are producing computers will go up. It's simple labor supply demand curves. So that's what you need to think about when we think about skills. Skills is an indirect demand. It's not a direct demand because your demand is based on the final product that is being produced or whatever intermediate, whatever product or service that is being produced.
A key transition that has happened in India recently has also been the digital transition, which has led to rise of gig workers, and that has also affected the employment market significantly. So if you had to think about how these problems at the micro level first and then macro level, how it can be addressed, if you could just elaborate a little bit upon that, I'd be very grateful.
So in India, they have created a gig worker definition, which is consists of two types of workers, gig workers and platform workers, or sorry, non-platform gig workers and platform gig workers. In the international literature, they are synonymous and they only mean platform workers. Okay, so that's something you need to be careful about. So in
Okay.
India, non-platform gig workers are nothing new. They've existed forever. People who are self-employed workers, the concept of self-employed workers has existed forever. There's nothing new about it. What is new is with the digital part of it, which is the platform gig workers. In Indian terminology, it's the platform gig workers. And that's what you are talking about. So I'm just so that I'm consistent with the language, I'm going to use the word platform workers so that we don't lose anything in translation. Now, platform workers are yes, it's a phenomena because it's offering jobs to the youth who didn't have one. Or I would even think is that at least in my own work, I did some work last year on food delivery platform workers, and I'm going to speak on from that only. That the food delivery platform workers offers jobs in tier 2 and tier 3 city workers. I'm still in the middle of doing some skill assessment, and believe you might relate to this. Somebody in the manufacturing sector said these kids these days, they prefer to become those food delivery platform workers versus working in the manufacturing sector because that is more glamorous. uh, and I did in my last year in the lead up to the work, we did interview some workers from tier 2 and tier 3 cities who actually find platform work quite glamorous. It's a and variety of reasons for it. I don't think so. This is a time or a thing. So the platform work does offer food delivery platform work does offer an opportunity for jobs when you didn't have one. And remember another thing I told you. I told you that food delivery that there were a lot of people who are sitting and just sitting for exams. So there is a very famous book, Time Pass, by this famous sociologist. I forget his name, but essentially is Craig something. He essentially says that in India, in northern India, people are just sitting and passing their time and sitting for government jobs. Now, suddenly, what does platform work allow you to? So these people who are just sitting for government jobs for 10 years, suddenly the platform work allows them or avenues, provide them an avenue for employment. So certainly it's a more product, they're still waiting to crack the government job, but it could be a potential productive way of using their time. Yes, there are many problems associated with it. I do not want to, like, again, it's a job day for subject for another day, but there are trade-offs, but offers a flexibility, and the flexibility is very important, critical for women workers, though in food delivery platform workers mostly are males. At least in my survey, 99% were males. Not my survey, NCR survey, 99% were males. So what you find is that platform worker is offering an opportunity. It is also, it is also for when you don't have nationally provided unemployment insurance, this offers you a backup plan that in case you lose your job, you can actually still keep the kitchen fires running. So it is a backup option. It is a stopgap arrangement. But it also offers, actually, it is interesting. It also offers students, youth rather, because it's mostly young, um, that offers them a place to learn skills. And now, what will you say? What are they learning, Barnali? They are learning how to deal with customers. So, in a potential customer relations job, it could potentially be useful. So you can think of like this is a paid apprenticeship, just not in the way the employers want it, but it's a paid apprenticeship. That's why I was saying aspirational matching is important also. But anyway, we'll come back to that. So it is important that they are and they are it's an empowering for them. They're earning money. They are using their time in a more productive manner. So, and it is contributing to the GVA. So it's platform work offers a lot of opportunities, and it's also a signal because we found that a lot of the people were overeducated for the job. If you see the numbers, it's like majority of the people were above 10th grade. You don't require a degree, and that is a skill mismatch, or if more high skilled workers are working in the food delivery platform sector, which means a signal for the other things that might be going wrong. Either it's aspirations mismatch, or it is that they're not finding their jobs, or they don't have the required skills. The education system is this thing. There were people even with technical and vocational degree who were looking for platform, who were working on the platform. Of course, the problem could be that we had just done it 1 year after the pandemic, around 22. Maybe things have changed now. but it did offer a fail-safe option during the platforms. So this is very, very important, and I think it's a very good stopgap arrangement, at least food delivery platform workers. And we need to look at these others, and even there are other platforms which are offering jobs for women. It offers them a way of flexibility. It offers them an avenue for work. Of course, there are many other challenges associated with this food delivery platform work, which is in the literature, in the policy making about social security, pensions, potential for exploitation, whether they're aware of their rights. But at the end of the day, in the net, it still remains an option that did not exist before for workers, for the youth specifically. It may be different. I'm talking mostly from the perspective of food delivery platform, but other sectors also offer options for people.
Thank you so
Sorry.
much for no. Thank you so much for sharing your insight on this. I think um, this becomes a key concern for state, especially when digital transformations have such an impact on the economy, and not just digital. The fact that there exists an aspirational challenge, there exists public sector jobs that allure so many Indians. I think just for our listeners, I want to mention that these exams usually happen once a year. These are called the civil service examination at the central level, and at the provincial level or the state level, they are, I think, state exams that happen once a year. And for about 1,000 seats, we have up to three to 10 lakh people who sit for them. So these are extremely competitive examinations. Um, so anyway, that was just to put everything in perspective for our listeners. But there clearly exists significant skill mismatch and skill gap. In light of that, the state or the government, the central government is often held accountable for this. How do you think in this budget the government has been able to address this gap? I would also be very grateful if you could elaborate upon how other policies are being introduced at the state level by different states to address skill gap and skill mismatch.
I think the government, both central and state governments recognize the problem, right? Every time an employer comes and says that I'm not finding enough people, they know there's a mismatch, right? There. Now, the thing is, one thing we have to be clear is that as I said, the gap arises in multiple levels. It could be from both on the supply side, on the demand side, and so on and so forth. So the government, all the governments have emphasized a lot on what you call is the technical and vocational education system, the vocational education system, where they're creating courses which cater to the employees, and to the asks of the state, of the governments. So this vocational system, the focus is on vocational system, creating a more robust vocational education system. And the other thing is that they have also created more policies for apprenticeships and internships, and that. But the problem is that our two, three things is what at least what we hear, and it is well documented in the paper, this note, the thing came out that even in engineering schools, which is the kind of technical schools that India is proud of, again, it's a kind of competition, very high rate of competition to get into these, what we call the Indian Institutes of Technology. Even maybe not them, but the second tier of engineering colleges, they do not, it's a dual problem. The world and the technology is changing rapidly. The curriculums are not changing. So we have the kids who are coming out don't have the most modern knowledge in the world. So that's one problem. The second problem is they do not also have, so neither do they have this upper end knowledge, nor do they have the hands-on training, because they have not worked enough, don't have enough practical skills. So they can't work there. And they also lack the soft skills. So, where do you address that? So sometimes it's just about people saying, hey, I need someone to work for 8 hours in a day. I need someone who appreciates that, you may face a problem, but you have to persist. You don't give up. You persist to solve the problem. So when you hear these things, these are all psychological traits, right? And this is not that one can teach to you a 20-year-old or overnight. Where or the how to somebody said how to communicate ideas. That is, your technology, but are not able to communicate them into the business data or business. You're not able to convey that into a business talk. It's the same thing like Devyani we were talking previously, right? How do I talk? So you said, no, our audience is this way. So we will only speak in non-technical language. So we are making the effort to speak in non-technical language so that our audience understands it. So obviously this we will speak in a technical language in a group room full of economists. Now these communication skills are missing, are not available, whereas it's part of the job. So we are this is my fundamental issues, and then unemployment rates are high. They're looking for a job, they don't get one. So it's this unemployment is a symptom of a larger problem that we need to solve. And what should the central and state governments do about it? The central and state governments should, okay, if they should listen to the firms. What do firms want? Because ultimately skilling has to be demand led. And some things can be solved by the technical and vocational education, and something has to be done at the education level. And if you recognize that these are the problems, then you should allow for the curriculums to accommodate for for these skill sets. Incorporate communication skills as part of your training. Incorporate that attitude to work for this thing. Incorporate discipline. Now discipline is not going to come overnight, right? So it has to be, again, something that you are taught from school. Nobody is saying that school is for getting a job only. Discipline is good anyway. It's good to be disciplined because it helps you in life. So my thing is, it has to be addressed at multiple levels. While we are talking about um, technical and vocational education system, but it comes at much when you're already 18 or 15 or 16, your foundational skills are already set. So those you have to also address those foundational skills. Anything which comes on the supply side is going to be incomplete because you don't know exactly what the firm wants. This is Becker, there's a lot of there's a lot of literature on it. So it's not that the supply side can solve all the problems. It has to come from the demand side. But at least if you can improve at least the general skill sets that are needed across jobs, whatever jobs they will get in the future, if we can strengthen them and improve the quality of the education, that would help. We don't need to burden them with knowledge. In today's world, you can go on Google and acquire the knowledge. The thing is that skilling ability, the ability that I don't know how language, can I acquire a new language? Can I learn a new language? That ability has to be there, and that confidence has to be there. And as I said, female unemployment rates are higher. So in that case, what is it that the females are doing right or wrong? We need to think about them. And females in general need more social skills. That you have to think about the problem holistically. And I stop here.
Thank you so much for really, really going in depth into the correlation between unemployment and skilling, and how skilling needs to be looked upon from a micro and a macro level, and what are certain things that the government can adopt at the center and at the state to really look at the challenge. Thank you so much for talking to us. You were listening to South Asia Chat. To learn more about our work, please visit us at isas.nus.edu.sg. You can also get updates from our social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter.